This video is sponsored by Manscaped. More about them later. If you played a little Pokemon, you've probably seen a Pokemon evolve. It's a classic way that these creatures get bigger, faster, and stronger. Some Pokemon evolve by simply just leveling up, but especially in recent years, some Pokemon evolve in the craziest of ways. Today, we're going to be looking back at all of these, every single evolution method in Pokemon. First, looking at the Generation 1 games, we'll start out with the true classic, plain old level up evolution. While it's definitely a standard and nondescript evolution method, it's a classic for a reason. When a Pokemon evolves by level up, you don't have to worry too much about figuring out how to evolve it. You can just play the game and wait for it to happen. This also lets Game Freak tune evolution levels to hit specific milestones in a playthrough, like Chimchar evolving into Monferno right at level 14, the same level as Rourke's Cranidos. Some interesting stats I'll share are that the lowest evolution level is 7, tied between Caterpie, Weedle, and Wurmple, and then the highest is Zweilous to Hydreigon at 64. Next we have evolution by use of an item. This one provides you with a lot of flexibility since you can control when the evolution happens, and in a lot of cases, some strategy is added to it because the item evolved Pokemon usually doesn't learn any more level up moves, at least in some of the earlier games. Maybe that's a bit frustrating if you didn't know about it, but it definitely makes it a bit of a balancing act, which I think is cool. Then the final evolution method for Gen 1 is Trade, which I really don't like. Listen, I get that this one is maybe a bit polarizing, but I just don't like how limiting it is. Unless you have 2 game systems and 2 games, or live with someone who has those things, you're kind of out of luck for these trade evolutions. This is made even worse in Gens 1 through 3, where trade evolutions essentially become a paid DLC since you need to buy a link cable or a wireless receiver to get them. That being said, there's a surprisingly low number of plain trade evolution Pokemon, but this will grow as the method gets more complicated. Hey, if you're enjoying this video and want to support the channel, you can hit the like button or subscribe. You can also become a channel member if you really want to give me some extra support, like my current members Egg Kim and Kuego, who's new to the scene. Thanks to you two. If you want to get shouted out in these videos, become a channel member today. Johto then adds a few new evolution methods, the first of those being leveling up with high friendship. Friendship was a semi-hidden stat added to Pokemon in Generation 2, basically representing how much your Pokemon likes you. You can increase friendship on your Pokemon by using items on it, getting it groomed, or just walking around with it, while having your Pokemon faint can cause its friendship to decrease. At first, friendship evolution sounds really cool, because you can just walk around a bunch and get an early evolution, but then in practice it isn't great, because you can get an early evolution, but you have to walk around a bunch. Luckily, there's not too many Pokemon that this kind of evolution applies to, but we'll see a lot of variations of this evolution method as we move through the series. One of those specific variations is leveling up with high friendship during a specific time of day, being introduced on Espeon and Umbreon during the day and night respectively. This method is obviously very similar to the last one, but just with the one added condition. The friendship part remains being the bulk of the evolution, and then you can just kind of save and wait until the right time of day, and then give your Pokemon a rare candy or level it up once to get the evolution you need. Post Generation 2, this method applies to Chimecho at night, Lucario during the day, and Frostmoth at night. In addition to friendship, another mechanic that Gen 2 added was held items, and with it came the trade while holding a specific item method of evolution. Again, this one is just a variation on an existing evolution method, but now it has the annoyance of needing a specific item which is sometimes locked to the late game or even post game. All these Pokemon evolve using the method, but how many of them have you actually used? Then lastly, there's an evolution method that's exclusive to Tyrogue. At level 20, Tyrogue evolves into either Hitmonlee, Hitmonchan, or Hitmontop, depending on its stat values at the time of the evolution. If Tyrogue's attack is greater than its defense, it becomes Hitmonlee. If its defense is higher than its attack, it becomes Hitmonchan, and if they're equal, it becomes Hitmontop. I think this one is super interesting, especially since you can manipulate it by using items, but it's also just interesting because it's the first and only time in Pokemon history where 2 Pokemon that were previously completely separate became part of the same evolutionary line. Neat, huh? This brings us to Generation 3, and these games brought us 3 new evolutionary methods, all of which are unique to specific Pokemon. The first is for the Wurmple line, which could be considered to just be a level up evolution, but it's technically different because it evolves into either Silcoon or Cascoon based on its personality value. This is a totally hidden stat, so it's basically correct to say that it's just a random evolution, but regardless, it's still a new evolutionary method in my book. Next is an evolution method that's quite famous, being Shedinjas. Nincada evolves into Ninjask by a normal level up at level 20, but if there's an open slot in the party when this happens, the player will get a Shedinja as well. This one is super cool because if you didn't know about it, you could definitely run into it for a huge, exciting surprise. Something I didn't know about this until writing this script is that apparently in Gen 4 and beyond, you also need a Pokeball in your inventory to make this evolution work. That makes me think about the potential for other Pokeball-related evolutions, like maybe a Pokemon only evolves if you catch it in a Dusk Ball or something. If that last method was famous, this next one is somewhat infamous. Feebas is a notoriously rare Pokemon, only able to be obtained by fishing the better part of your childhood away, and well, it's not exactly an amazing Pokemon for all the work you put in. However, its evolution Melodic is an amazing Pokemon, used by 2 champions. While nowadays Feebas evolves via trading while holding a Prism Scale, originally, you used to have to level it up with a maxed out beauty stat, which would have cost you a lot of Poffins or Pokeblocks. And now, I don't know about you, but I don't have a lot of real life Pokeblocks to spare when it comes to maxing out my personal beauty stat, but I do have the sponsor of today's video, Manscaped's Beard Hedger. The Beard Hedger is a beast of a beard trimmer, with a unique cutting angle to lift flat-lying hairs, and a single guard that can support up to 20 different hair cutting lengths. This thing is now my go-to beard trimmer, as it's got a really premium feel, both with the guard while I'm shaving my beard, and without it while I'm getting the edges around it. It makes for a really precise and clean trim that not just I notice, but my wife likes it too. That's right, there's a Mrs. Pokethink. It's also waterproof, cordless, rechargeable with USB Type-C, and comes with this really nice carrying case that I'm definitely going to be using this summer. And you don't need to just take my word for it, because Manscaped's got a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you can try this out totally risk-free. So if you want to level up your beard and the experience of trimming it, go to manscaped.com today and get 15% off and free international shipping when you use promo code POKETHINK at checkout. Welcome to Generation 4 in the Sinnoh region, where evolution methods start to foreshadow some of the absurdity that is to come. The first few of these new methods are pretty tame, however, being gendered evolutions. We'll first look at the simple gender plus level up method, which is applied to Burmese evolutions and Vespiquen. I really do like this method, as it feels like something that creatures in this universe would naturally do, but it can leave you in situations like having a male Combi on your team, only to realize that 244 base stat total, that's not getting any higher. Simple level up plus gender evolution is only ever truly used again on the Salazzle line, but if you count forms, it also applies to Meowstic and Oinkologne. Then to tail off gendered evolutions, there's gendered item evolutions, applied to male Kirlias and female Snorunt's to get Gallade and Frostlass respectively, both using a Dawnstone. Things start to get kind of interesting when we arrive at level up while a move is known evolutions, which was primarily added to Pokemon who got cross-generational evolutions in Generation 4. Interestingly, this basically just boils down to a regular level up evolution, as the moves needed for these evolutions are often only learned by level up. This applies to most future evolutions as well, but it is still a pretty cool method, and it does allow Game Freak to limit these evolutions game by game, either making them essentially level up evolutions, or freeing them up to be item evolutions where the item that's needed is a TM. Speaking of item evolutions, Gen 4 brought us the level up while holding an item method, which is, for whatever reason, also always restricted by a time of day requirement. Happiny, Sneasel, Gligar, and Hisuian Sneasel all evolve via this method. I'm not exactly sure why time of day was tacked on there, but it does feel really similar to all the other item evolutions, making for a flexible yet interesting method overall. The Gen 4 games also introduced location-based evolutions, which again applied only to cross-gen evolutions. Magneton and Nosepass evolve into Magnezone and Probopass when leveled up at Mount Coronet, and Eevee evolves into Leafeon and Glaceon near the Moss and Ice Rock respectively. Like some other methods, this one feels like it makes a lot of narrative sense for the creatures of the Pokemon world. But it did require Game Freak to add viable locations for these evolutions in every game afterwards, like New Mauville in Oris, a Moss Rock in the Pinwheel Forest, or the Ice Rock in the Frost Cavern. This evolution was then applied to the Vikavolt and Crabominable lines in Gen 7, but the whole mechanic was done away with in Gen 8, changing all of these to item evolutions. And lastly, Gen 4 gave us a unique evolution for Mantike. Mantike will only evolve into Mantine if you level it up while you have a Remoraid in your party. Interestingly, the Remoraid doesn't leave your party, so I guess it just multiplied or something? Regardless, it's still a cool feature. Moving on to Generation 5, those games actually only add one new evolutionary method to the series, and it somehow makes trade evolution even worse. In Unova, you could find the Pokemon Karrablast and Shelmet, 2 fairly weak mono bug types. If you trade them with each other, and only each other, they will evolve into Escavalier and Axelgore respectively. Now, listen, I think this is really thematically cool, as the lore is that Shelmet's armor is basically getting passed to Karrablast, resulting in their new forms. And it's not hard to figure out because the Pokédex just straight up tells you about it. But what a tedious way to evolve a Pokemon. Not only do I need to track down a friend who's willing to trade with me, but now they also need to have the right Pokemon to trade. Luckily, these aren't version exclusives, so you can still just catch both on one DS and then get everything sorted out with 3 trades, but still. Also, this is kind of a cool bit of information I learned about the evolution. If either Pokemon is holding an Everstone, neither of them evolves. This makes sense because if only one of them evolved, that would result in either 2 sets of armor or no sets of armor. This does kind of make me think that another cool evolution method would be having a Pokemon evolve by KOing another specific Pokemon. I think this would work really well if Zangoose and Seviper ever got evolutions, since their whole thing is that they're natural rivals, even in real life. Generation 6 gave us a few new evolution methods, but most of them are unique. The least unique of them, affecting a whole 2 Pokemon, is a simplification of the level up while holding an item during a time of day method. Wow, that's a mouthful. Taking away the item portion. Tyrunt evolves into Tyrantrum if it's leveled up to 39 or beyond, but only during the day. And Amora evolves into Aurorus the same way, but only at night. This would later be used on all of these Pokemon. Out of them, Lycanroc could technically be considered to be more complicated, but we'll talk about that during the Alola section of the video. I think this method could be frustrating if you don't know about it, but if you're playing the game frequently enough, you're likely to run into the evolution eventually. Then we've got a few that are truly unique evolutions. Sylveon shows off the new Affection mechanic, which sounds very similar to Friendship, but is different until at least Generation 8. To get Sylveon, you'll need to get at least 2 levels of Affection on your Eevee, as well as have it know a Fairy-type move, and then you can level it up. Affection or Friendship aside, I think knowing the move of a specific type is a little bit better than knowing a specific move, as it provides you with a lot more flexibility. So, thanks Sylveon, I guess. Next up, Pancham evolves into Pangoro only when it hits level 32 or beyond with a Dark-type Pokemon in the party. This isn't super neat or anything, but it's just a cool addition to the list of existing methods, and it does help that you have a lot of flexibility in pulling it off. Sliggoo then evolves into Goodra at or above level 50, but only if it's rainy or foggy in the area where it levels up. And the same goes for its Hisuian variation. I really like this kind of evolution, as it makes me think about what other Pokemon might evolve only in other weather conditions, like snow or sandstorm. Finally, there's a unique evolution that's a little bit silly. Inkay can evolve into Malamar when it reaches level 30 or beyond, but only if you're holding the 3DS or the Switch upside down, which is pretty cool, and it's reflected in its design. It is unfortunate that this means you can't actually evolve it on a docked Switch, but its coolness factor kinda makes up for that. Something that I think would have made this evolution extra cool is if Inkay changed its type during the evolution, from a Dark and Psychic type to a Psychic and Dark type. Effectively the same, but it would have been a nice joke. Next up, we'll talk about Generation 7. Sun and Moon were the first games to make regional forms of Pokemon, and while they didn't add regional evolutions in the way that Gen 8 did, they did still bring about some regional evolutionary methods. You can see what I'm talking about on evolutionary lines where only one Pokemon in the line got a regional form. The first of these is Cubone's evolution into Alolan Marowak. Cubone will evolve only into Alolan Marowak via level up if it's in Alola, and it also happens to be a nighttime evolution. So technically, that's a new evolutionary method. Level up plus time of day plus region. There are 2 other Pokemon that also have these region-specific evolutions, Pikachu and Execute, both evolving into Alolan Raichu and Alolan Exeggutor respectively when given the correct evolution stone, but only in Alola. Similarly, Sun and Moon gave us the first game version specific evolutions as well. Cosmoem will evolve at level 53, but it evolves into Solgaleo in Pokemon Sun, Ultra Sun, Sword, and Scarlet, and Lunala in Moon, Ultramoon, Shield, and Violet. Kind of interesting how the Scarlet and Violet colorings work out there. And as I previously foreshadowed, the Lycanroc line sports one of these evolutions as well. Rockruff will only evolve into Midday Lycanroc if level past 25 in Sun or Ultra Sun during the daytime, and will only evolve into Midnight Lycanroc if leveled past 25 in Moon or Ultramoon during the nighttime. The version-specific requirement of this evolution would then be removed in generations 8 and up. And finally, Rockruff has another unique evolution method, only evolving into Dusk form Lycanroc if it has the ability Own Tempo, and if the level 25 threshold was hit during the evening time, which differs from game to game. Oh, and I guess this Pokemon isn't technically from Alola, but I'll still mention Meltan, who currently can only be evolved via Meltan candies in Pokemon Go. Maybe one day we'll be able to evolve it in the main series games, but that day is not today. Generation 8 is up next, featuring a lot of new and strange evolution methods. Getting some simple ones out of the way, coughing to Galarian wheezing brings us the plain requirement of leveling up in the correct region, with no time requirement attached. And Mime Jr. to Galarian Mr. Mime then adds the region requirement to the pre-existing level up with a move known method. The Toxtricity line has an interesting unique evolution method, which is a level up evolution, but it's based off the Pokemon's nature. Certain natures evolve Toxel into the amped form Toxtricity, and the rest all evolve it into the low-key form. I think that's a pretty good way to basically have the evolution be random, but still something you can check when breeding or catching them and grinding levels. Now we'll talk about another form evolution, Sinistea to Poltegeist, which is technically a variation on the pre-existing item-based evolution method, since you need to use a specific item based on the form of your Sinistea, which can be really hard to see if you don't know how to find it. It's a cool little piece of Sinistei's design, but it is also just kind of tedious. This method was of course later expanded to Poltergeist and Sinistcha. Now is where things start to get really weird. Galarian Farfetch'd has the very strange evolution requirement of landing 3 critical hits in one battle, and then still being alive by the end of it. If you didn't know about this one, you'll probably just go the rest of the game not having the evolution, unless you found the leak item, which raises its critical hit ratio by 2 stages. The Milcery line has another unique evolution, requiring it to hold one of the sweet items, and then you need to do one of those spin things to get it to evolve. This evolution has quite a few variables, like which sweet you use, which way you spin, how long you spin, and the time of day you spin at, resulting in 63 different forms. And no, I'm not counting all 63 of these as different forms, since none of them have any stat, move pool, or ability variations. Galarian Yamask has a notoriously complex evolution method to evolve Runerigus, to the point where I really wonder how the first person to evolve it even figured it out. To get this evolution to pop off, you need to first take at least 49 HP and damage without fainting. Why 49? I don't know, I don't make the rules. But that damage can come from multiple battles, it just can't be self-inflicted or weather-inflicted, so watch out for that. Then, you've got to travel to this specific rock arch in the Dusty Bowl, and when you move under it, the evolution will happen spontaneously. If you know why this evolution is this way, like if it's a reference or something, please comment it down below. I really don't get it, but hey, maybe the devs at Game Freak just wanted to mess with us. Lastly, for Generation 8, there's the Cupfu evolutions. While these were changed to just be item evolutions in Generation 9, in Gen 8, these evolutions were basically just part of the story. You choose which form of Urshifu your Cubfu will turn into by training it in a different location, the Tower of Darkness or the Tower of Waters. After making it to the top and interacting with the tower's banner, you get yourself an Urshifu. Pretty cool of Game Freak to make a short DLC story that's about raising and evolving a single Pokemon. But before we move on to Generation 9, we should talk about some evolution methods specific to Legends Arceus. Legends Arceus changed things up a bit for Pokemon, adding some new battle mechanics, but also taking some away. One mechanic they took away was held items, so that meant that Hisuian Sneasel was going to need a different evolution method. Game Freak just opted for the Razor Claw item to become a usable item in this game instead of a held item. However, to get Sneasler, you need to use this item during the daytime, which makes for an evolutionary method we haven't seen before. This was also done on Ursaring, as you evolve it into Ursaluna with the Peat block, but only during a full moon. Another mechanic that was added to Legends Arceus was strong and agile style moves. Using a strong style move meant it would take longer to attack, but it would deal lots of damage, and then agile style would do the opposite. 2 Pokemon make use of this mechanic for their evolutions. Stantler evolves into Weirdeer by using Psy-Shield Bash 20 times in the agile style, and Hisuian Quillfish evolves into Overquill by using Barb Barrage 20 times in the strong style. Then lastly, there's also a unique evolution method for the Basculin line. First off, it's a gendered evolution, but then you need to level it up after taking 294 points of recoil damage, which can be spread across multiple battles, thankfully. Pretty fitting for a Pokemon that is said to be clad in the souls of its fallen comrades. And now we've made it to today, with Generation 9 bringing us just a few more evolution methods. The first new method I'll talk about is leveling up after reaching so many steps in Let's Go mode, which basically just lets your Pokemon walk around in the overworld with you. Pomo, Bramblin, and Breloor all evolve via this method, which I really get for the last 2, but I've never really understood it for Pomo. This evolution method is kind of tedious and time-consuming, especially since there's no step tracker or anything. But if you know how to do the good old top of the Pokemon Center trick, you'll get it in no time. Finizen then evolves into Palafin using another new feature to Scarlet and Violet, the Union Circle, which is basically just the 2-player mode in the overworld. All you have to do is have one of these Union Circle groups be active, and then get Finizen to either level 38 or higher. So moving into the future, the question is, will Game Freak keep multiplayer features like this around, or will this evolution method change? Bisharp has a somewhat complex requirement to evolve into Kingambit. You need to use Bisharp to defeat 3 other wild Bisharps that are holding on to the Leader's Crest item, which will be visibly distinct as they're surrounded by little hordes of Pawniards. I think this is cool narratively, since I think it's somewhat of a loose metaphor for climbing the ranks of the feudal system, but mechanically, I think it's one of those that I'd never be able to figure out without a guide. Next, we'll talk about Primeape's evolution into Annihilate, which happens via level up after using the move Rage Fist 20 times. Honestly, this seems kind of like a perfect new evolution method to me. It's a good twist on the level up with a move known method, as it's something that you might just happen upon since Rage Fist is an interesting move, and you can build those 20 usages over time while grinding or something. And it also just makes for a fun narrative. The evolution also then makes this coverage move into a stab move, since Annihilate is a ghost type, so that's a nice touch. I'd love to see more like this in the future. And finally, an evolution method I'd not like to see make a return is good old Pokemon number 1000, Gold Dingos. In order to evolve Gimmighoul, you'll need to level it up while also holding 999 Gimmighoul coins in your bag. These coins are going to take you the better part of the game to collect, as you can only find them in small amounts in the overworld, but you do get larger numbers of them when you fight wild Gimmighouls. And let me be clear, I do think that this is a cool evolution method, very fitting for Pokemon number 1000, especially since it's themed after treasure, but I just don't want to see it again because I don't want to go through it again. So there you have it, every single evolutionary method in Pokemon. Let me know in the comments which ones are your favorite and what new ones you might like to see in the future. I want to give another shout out to my channel members, Egg, Kim, and Kuego. Support like theirs is something that really helps me make these videos, so a huge thank you to them. If you want to support me like that too, you can become a channel member today or subscribe. But it would also really help me if you were just willing to watch another one of my videos right after this one. If you liked this topic, I'll recommend my video on Pokemon battle gimmicks, where I make up 3 of my own. Be sure to use code POKETHINK to get 15% off the Beard Hedger with free international shipping from manscaped.com. And as always, I'll see y'all in the next video.